This is the Go Maluku podcast.
What's good, everyone? Ghazali Ohorella here, Go Maluku podcast, new episode, and this one is a assessment of COP27. Particularly the negotiating streams that I was involved in. Loss and damage is one, Article 6 is the other, and some people asked me what I thought about the cover decision, so I'll throw that into the mix as well. If you're interested in Coronivia, agriculture, what else? There's so many more ACE, other processes. Then this is not the this is not the debrief for you, because I was only involved in Article 6 of laws of damage, and I will only cover those in this podcast episode. Got my notes with me to refresh my memory. And on the outset, I apologize for this late post. I was at COP for 2 weeks, but I had to cut it a little bit short. Usually I say until the very end, but I had to leave COP 1 day before it ended to make sure that I was in time in Geneva for the next meeting that I'm involved in, which is the expert workshop on enhanced participation of Indigenous Peoples representative institutions at the Human Rights Council. About that, probably I'll talk about that in a different video. Right, COP27. So let me kick off with which should I kick off with? Yeah, Article 6, obviously. The thing that we knew going into Article 6 was obviously that there was not enough time for the supervisory body of 6.4 to deal with all the issues they had to deal with. Again, didn't have enough time. The main reason why they didn't have enough time was because it took them for over 6 months, a little bit beyond the bond meeting. So that's July, halfway July, for them to actually have a quorum or have the members ready to be part of the supervisory body. So after they finally had that quorum, and they had the members appointed from the regions to the supervisory body, they had 3 meetings which they had to squeeze into the final months between Bonn and Egypt to do the work. So you already knew that there was too much work that needed to be done. However, there was too little time for them to do something. So that's what you saw, right? From an Indigenous people point of view, at the very first meeting of the supervisory body, we sent in a letter outlining the position of Indigenous people, saying that, well, we're referencing the decision, we're part of the decision text, and we are basically saying that we're there to keep pressure on the supervisory body to do what is right, to do what is needed to be done in terms of protecting the high integrity, protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples, protecting human rights in all the work of the carbon market mechanism. So that letter was sent to the supervisory body before they had their first meeting with the quorum. So that was somewhere in July. And then you already saw them, what they had to discuss methodologies, and then there's another meeting in September that was a little bit back to back to the Human Rights Council, and then there was another set of meetings, a couple of days actually prior to COP27 in Egypt, and that's when you knew, they don't have enough time to do the work. The final meeting of the supervisory body, it was on a Sunday, or that ended on a Sunday before COP started. It was a marathon meeting, 26 hours. You did see that because there was not enough time, that they had to cut corners. For them to be able to send the recommendations up to the CMA, so their supervisory body, for its adoption. So the work that they delivered was not didn't show like high quality, high integrity work. It was actually below the standard that wanted them to be in. That was when it comes to definition of removals, it was so broad, that it was all actually irresponsible for the CMA, according to the civil society and indigenous peoples, for the CMA to go through with it. And then there was the application of human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples, and in the view of the supervisory body, the recommendation was that it is the national prerogative of a state to apply human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples, meaning that it only applies if the states wanted to apply. It's not it's not an overarching principle, and that which is something that we wanted to include or wanted to ensure in Glasgow, and which we got in the decision text in Glasgow. So you did see that there was a lot of loopholes and below standards issues that that the supervisory body was sent up to the CMA. And it doesn't mean that everyone within the supervisory body is evil. It is just like they didn't have enough time. So if you don't have enough time to do something, then you resort to to what you know. And so you resort to, for example, the CDM mechanism. Like that's what you're used to. So you try to like, all right, you know what, we don't have enough time, so let's just do something that we've already done before, which is the clean development mechanism. So that was obvious. It's almost like you're sending something. You're back in high school. You had to turn some paper in, and you didn't have enough time, so you just write something, and you turn it in, and hope for the best. You know that it's not good, but you hope for that it's just good enough for it to be to be accepted by your teacher. And that is the sentiment that everyone had with the work that was sent up by the supervisory body to the CMA. Obviously, the work was not well done. So indigenous peoples and civil society, like we shifted into gear. On Sunday, like usually you have a couple of days to, like 1 or 2 days to get into the mode, to suit up. But now, like we had to start off from the very first day. On a Sunday, we have to start working. And that's when from an indigenous people's point of view, we said, all right, there are three things that we want to see done here. One is that all these recommendations are sent back to from the CMA to the supervisory body, and tell them to do a better job. That's one. The second is to do a better job, like that shows high integrity. So like give them a mandate to do high integrity work, provide high integrity recommendations. And the third thing where we want to see was to give them enough time. So not till the next substa meeting, but to the next CMA meeting, which is then COP28. So we drafted a position paper, three issues, and we used that throughout the negotiations to ensure that things were sent back. And that's when you see actually that this is getting traction. Civil society was mobilizing the other interest groups. We as indigenous people, we went into like bilateral meetings, and we had there was a lot of we're building momentum on that one. And I think it's actually to the efforts of indigenous peoples and civil society that the CMA did send the work back, and did give them until the CMA 5, which is COP28, for the supervisory body to do better work. Up until like the penultimate day of COP27, there was indigenous people of human rights and rights of many people within there in the text, but it then was removed, and it was yeah, you did see some. There was some language and stakeholder consultations, but the high integrity work was no, not the way that we. It was not described as we wanted it to, and it gives room for indigenous peoples, parties, observers, other constituencies to provide their views on the outstanding issues, including the independent grievance mechanism. Oh, sorry, independent grievance process by March 15th. So we're 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 not getting what we wanted, but there's this consultation process that has been developed, or they have outlined, that the supervisor body needs to needs to use to get views from people on the issues. So that was the how our 6 before supervisory mechanism work got became until until the very last day. Are we disappointed? Obviously. What could we have done better? Well, I'll definitely touch upon that later on, because there are some things that I think that we as indigenous people need to do much better at. Because we're doing well. However, the final stretch is something that we really need to improve on. And so 6-4 is something that we can look back at, like, all right, we did. It's better than nothing. We averted further damage, actually, and we could helped the with other constituencies, like the kick the can further down the road, and which also gives indigenous peoples the opportunity to also engage with the work, with the climate work beyond COP. So not just because this is one of my one of the pitfalls, actually, of the movement, is like when then COP happens, as soon as it ends, and people are poof, they go like into hibernation, like they don't follow up to the work, and it's actually super important that you do follow up to the work. And then some people they wake up again, like a month or weeks before the bond meeting, but that's already too late. And when they do go to the bond meeting, after the bond meeting, they go to sleep, and then wake up again when COP happens again. And those are things that we need to be consistent in our engagement in the process, because there's you talk about participation, and participation doesn't the right to participate in decision making processes that affect them doesn't mean to participate when it suits you, when it's convenient for you. There is this opportunity to participate, so you need to keep participating. You need to keep pushing. So that is something that I see happen all the time, actually, from the vast majority of indigenous peoples. They have a hard time keeping up. Other processes, other priorities, maybe. However, like when you and that's why I mean, when I explain to other people to what they need to be focusing on when they're going to the COP for the very first time, is focus on one particular process or two, but no more. And focusing on a process means that you need to get familiar with it in Bonn or at COP, but also to keep tracking it throughout the year. Because that is super important, because most decisions in Bonn have already been made. The negotiators have their mandates, have their instructions, and it's mostly like dotting the I's and crossing the T's when you go to Bonn. So focus on one particular process. And so that's 6-4. 6-8 is or where should I go? Well, no, 6-2. That is something that yeah, pretty much concerned about is because we've been focusing so much about the on loss and damage 614, and that 62 is super technical, that in the end things got, got slipped. They slipped something in there. Just to remind you, so like 6.4 is this market, for country to country, and there's a supervisory body that oversees that market, and then there's 6.2, which outlines the rules for countries trading with each other, right? And because of Glasgow, because of the overarching human rights, principles, what was for us important was to ensure transparency and, the respect for human rights and the rights of Indigenous peoples. Now, 6.2, if you go through the text, it's pretty technical, but what is kind of a concern is paragraph 22, which is the transparency loophole. If you look at the text, so it actually allows for countries to trade, in secret, and this is what this is what they can do now. It's the parties or countries that are participating in this market mechanism. They will be able to designate information as quote unquote confidential, so that this will mean that that information that countries will need to report when they're trading, which carbon credits or ITMOs, they can tell that this particular report should be kept confidential, and that is super concerning, and it is obviously compromises transparency and therefore also like accountability, and it gives countries like complete control over whether they can information, public or secret. So that is quite, quite a problem actually. If you look at the 6.2 line, which is where they slipped there at the slipped in at the end. What how this will all pan out is something that we'll have to see, for the next couple of months, definitely in Bonn, to see what how this will be operationalized, and it's definitely a concern. It's something that, not just from indigenous people's point of view, but other constituencies have saw it as well, and they're like, oh my god, like how did this happen at the very end? And again, it goes into, something that I want to talk about later on, about like the strategy of indigenous peoples, particularly in the second week. So that is what we saw in the 6.2. 6.4, obviously, that's what we've seen, the sending back of the recommendations. What we also saw is that in addition to the ITMOs, which is like the carbon credit, a new type of carbon credit has been established, which is like the mitigation contribution unit. It will not be used to offset, for offset claims, but it will be used to contribute to the mitigation efforts of the host country of these projects that are happening under 6.4. So that is something that you see, that there's two different, credits actually that have been created, and this new particular credit actually, it's different in such a way that it's, how should I describe it? These new credits or these new units are not used towards the achievement of the NDCs, I think that's something that we need to keep in mind, or other other mitigation purposes. Um, what instead these mitigation contribution units will be used for, amongst other things, will be for, results-based climate finance, domestic mitigation pricing schemes or mechanisms, or measures, so that it's to contribute to the reducing of emission levels by the host party. So it's not necessarily NDC related, but I think that's what I got from the text of this new mitigation um, contribution units. Again, something that I yeah it's like lowering the threshold. It's like, so you have two types of credits now, and you do see that they're trying to do so many ways actually, or create new ways for keeping people on board, for member states to participate, or parties to participate, and to keep people happy, because a market mechanism can only work if people participate in it, and people only want to participate if there's something that they can get out of the market mechanism. So I can imagine that the ITMOs as they are right now is something that, can be helpful to some countries, but they create these mitigation contribution units to cater the needs or the wants of other countries actually. So that is something that that we saw being created in under 6.4 as well. 6.4 also included activity design, and you did see that there's the reference to, which was already like a disappointing language to begin with, paragraph 31E of the Glasgow decision about consultations in with Indigenous peoples and local communities, in line with domestic arrangement, when appropriate, when applicable, when available, blah blah blah. It was super disappointing, and that got out of the text as well. And I think that is, I still have to go through the text like more thoroughly to understand like why I got out of the text, and if something came back for it that could, that could refer to that particular text in Glasgow. That's paragraph 31E, because 31E was a disappointment. It's such a disappointment that it's hard to lobby for it, because it's hard to see, hard to look at. So if it's even hard to look at and it's almost like super weak, then it's very hard for you to gather the diplomatic, political, or lobbying capacity or investment for it to keep it in, because it's was a super disappointing paragraph. So that obviously got out. So I have to go through the text again to be able to see if it came back in some other way, or did we actually lose it. So that's on 6.4. 6.2 I covered already. 6.8, which is on the non-market approaches for country to country to help each other. So there are no credits involved. Ideally, everyone should be focusing on the non-market approaches under the 6.8. However, everyone wants to make money, so everyone is focused on 6.2 and 6.4, and not so much on 6.8. That's why you did see in Glasgow that that parties around the table are actually like having a hard time like really getting a grasp on what is a non-market approach. At least that's what they say, and they created this Glasgow committee actually to figure out what a non-market approach is. So in the working draft, there was reference to Indigenous peoples, and there was like a comprehensive list of additional focus areas. So that is what this non-market approach would refer to. Sorry, no. the additional focus areas of the work program activities of the Glasgow Committee. So it has like its focus areas that it's already was going to focus areas that it was already going to focus on. But then it created an extensive list of additional focus areas, which included indigenous peoples. And you did see then, like it's in there for the first week and a half, and then in the final days, boom, gone, and then the direct reference to indigenous peoples removed. So now what you do see now in the final text, like, there's a timeline for implementation of the 6.8 non-market approach work plan for 2023, 2024. They will ask, so the Glasgow Committee will ask stakeholders to help identify what non-market approaches are out there and who can participate. And so again, there's this an opportunity for indigenous peoples to engage in the work. And it has started to, it's identified phases actually. So phase one, so from next year onwards to 2024, it will focus on identifying and framing relevant elements of the work program activities and operationalize this web-based platform. Again, I don't know what it is going on within the ERCCC, but everything needs to be a web-based platform nowadays. So that's phase one. So identifying, framing, website, web-based platform for phase one, which ends in 2024. And then phase two will be 2025 to 2026. And then they will focus on implementation of the committee's work program. So yeah, this is UNFCCC's way of kicking the can further down the road. Like, let's workshop our way towards something. So if we can't get to a decision, so they couldn't get to a decision in Glasgow, so all right, we flip it on its belly, and we make a workshop out of it. And so we workshop our way to what we're supposed to be doing anyway. But now it takes more time, and it keeps people happy. So you won't see anything concrete coming out of 6.8 until they start phase two, which means during phase one, indigenous peoples need to be participating in like helping shape what actually a non-market approach is, who the stakeholders are, and what of the importance of the rights-based approach, the importance of human rights obligations that states have, the importance of promoting and respecting the rights of indigenous peoples and human rights. I think that is something that we need to be focusing on in for the next couple of years when it comes to 6.8. So that's 6.2, 6.4, 6.8. Also a little bit 6.4, the what's it called, the supervisory body work. So if we could then go to the Santiago network, which is loss and damage. Loss and damage, what we knew before we got to Egypt was the vast majority of states did not have a mandate from capital to talk about compensation. Still, you did see, no talk about compensation. Yes, they're creating this new global shield or finance mechanism and all these things, but there's still no actual deal has been made about compensation. So that's what we need to keep in mind. This is they're still avoiding the elephant in the room, and they're still avoiding the talk about So the elephant in the room is compensation and finance, right? So what do? They create these new facilities and these new ways actually to keep particularly developing countries happy. So if you look at the Santiago network, for example, let me pause that. Let me start with our vantage point. From indigenous people's point of view, we had some priorities. One was a robust discussion about non-economic loss and damage. That needed to be. We need to start talking about that. because if you look at the loss and damage conversation, it's almost every conversation about like it's already done. Like it's we're mitigating the loss and damage. We're not trying to avoid it. We're not trying to avert it. So there needs to be a robust discussion about averting loss and damage and non-economic loss and damage. So what is non-economic loss and damage? From these people's point of view, it's culture, it's language, it's knowledge, it's their identity. That's all like the things that you can't put a dollar sign on, that you can't quantify, that you cannot monetize. These are all non-economic loss and damage that we need to talk about. So non-economic loss and damage, averting loss and damage are two important issues, as well as the participation of indigenous peoples in the loss and damage conversation, and also its work. Why? Because that, for example, if you look at the Santiago Network, and Santiago Network on loss and damage is a platform particularly built for the developing countries, so that they can receive technical assistance. Again, this is not about money. This is about technical assistance from developed countries to help them mitigate loss and damage. That is, in broad strokes, what the Santiago Network is. Indigenous peoples could very well be on both ends, actually, on providing technical assistance, but also receiving technical assistance, because like the developing countries, indigenous peoples are also facing loss and damage, so they should be part of the network. On the flip side is that indigenous peoples can also provide assistance, expertise, and knowledge in how to mitigate loss and damage or how to avert loss and damage. So we are in the unique position, indigenous peoples, to be both on the receiving end but also on the providing end of the Santiago Network. So that's why participation of indigenous peoples in the loss and damage and Santiago Network is super important. Now, so if you look at those three like points of departure, what I said before, Santiago Network, why it is so important that we participate in it. You did see that there's so we had to negotiate. We had to make sure that this human rights based approach, and that there's participation of indigenous peoples in the work of the Santiago Network. Well, Santiago Network, it has created this its decision text. I think it's believed paragraph 26 talks about take into account the needs of vulnerable people and indigenous peoples, local communities, in terms of technical assistance provided through the Santiago Network in a demand-driven manner, through a country-driven process. So there's a direct reference to indigenous peoples, saying that when technical assistance is provided, that it's country-driven, but also takes into account the needs of indigenous peoples. And if you go further than that, which was a fight, it was a huge fight, was the ability for the Santiago Network. Sorry, no, I should rephrase that. Parties decided that all technical assistance provided under the Santiago Network on loss and damage must be in line with the 11th preamble paragraph of the Paris Agreement. And the 11th preamble paragraph includes human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples. So, because that's what paragraph 27 says. So that it affirms that when technical assistance provided by the Santiago Network, that it should be taken to take into consideration the cross-cutting issues from the 11th preamble paragraph. So the good thing is that the human rights obligations that states have, and the rights of indigenous peoples obligations that states have, that these are taken into consideration throughout all technical assistances that are taking place under Santiago Network. So it's not just one side of it, but everything that's happening under the Santiago network, that when its technical assistance is provided, it has to go through the filter of, yeah, the respect, the respective obligations of states when it comes to like the rights of indigenous peoples, human rights, etc., etc. Everything that's in the 11th preamble paragraph of the Paris Agreement, which is good, because what we also got in there was that the Santiago network obviously will need some kind of oversight mechanism, and that's what they call an advisory board. So it doesn't really explain or say that it's an oversight mechanism, but it's actually a board that will, an advisory board that will actually help facilitate the work of the Santiago network on loss and damage. So that advisory board needs to be composed by, states, obviously. And the good thing is that what we got in there as a collective, as indigenous peoples, said that the advisory board will also have 3 other representatives. One from the women and gender constituency, one from the children and youth NGOs, and one from indigenous peoples organizations, and who may actively participate in the deliberations of the advisory board. Not necessarily something that I wanted in terms of modalities, because ideally what I wanted to see in there was that these additional seats for constituencies, these representatives would have the same power as the state representatives or party representatives, except for the right to participate in the decision making or the right to vote, for example. But everything else, like, they should have the same power, because only then, like, it would make sense. And this is where you see the difference between effective participation and meaningful participation. Full and effective participation is having the exact same modalities or participation modalities as the rest. That is full and effective participation. Full and meaningful participation, which is the word that's been used of late, particularly introduced by some Western countries and groups. This is what you see. This is like the idea of participation. It's like you can actively participate in the work. However, it stops at a certain point. So not at the point when they make decisions, but like you can sit in a meeting for the first, for the first hour, and then you have to go. Now you see like the very difference between full and effective participation and full and meaningful participation. So not necessarily happy with the modalities, happy that we have actually an these people's representative in there, because the person that will be sitting there from indigenous peoples would be representing the caucus. The person would not be representing their own individual capacity. Like, they're not an independent expert. They would be representing the caucus, the indigenous peoples, the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change. So, which means that the caucus itself would need to start figuring out like how some kind of infrastructure. One is how to appoint such a person. 2, how that person would be representing the caucus, accountability, transparency, and all these things, like how that would take place. So that is something that indigenous peoples need to be thinking about, or the caucus need to be thinking about. And that is also something that I'm quite hesitant about, because we are very good at creating all these new avenues and these new approaches, and get these names or seats on boards and facilitate working groups and everything else. but in general, we don't have the stamina to see through. In general, we don't have the stamina to see to ensure that that person will have proper backup, or the proper mandate to do the work. So that's a little bit of my concern. However, I'm super happy that we got it in there, ecstatic. But it's also like, in terms of these negotiations, ultimately need to look ahead, several steps ahead, and that's something that I hope that, and these people are now aware of. Like, oh, we were creating these opportunities, but we also need to make sure that we are keeping tabs, or making sure that we can keep up with everything. So yeah, so this advisory board established to guide the Santiago network, and with additional representatives of indigenous peoples, women and gender, and youth constituencies. And this all. So what should these people do, right? What they should be doing is to increase the Santiago network, and through its advisory board, to deliver real and rights-based solutions. And I think that's something that we need to keep pushing, as constituencies, as indigenous peoples and civil society, that to deliver real and rights-based solutions. I think that is something that's something that we need to keep in mind, in front of mind actually, and make sure that these people understand, that are representative of the constituencies, that they are going to do that, because they have to work with representatives of the parties, the UN regions, probably one from LDCs, one from SIDS, and then two representatives from the WIM executive committee. So yeah, it's just the three of you as representatives of the constituencies. So yeah, you have a battle to fight, to ensure that the Santiago network delivers technical assistance that delivers real and rights-based solutions. All right, so that is Article 6, loss and damage. Let me take me through the notes again. Cover decision. Some of you asked me, like, all right, so what is the status of 1.5, right? So the 1.5 degrees, that's our barometer. 1.5 to stay alive. Everyone keeps talking about it. Like, what is actually the status of it? If you look from Glasgow to Egypt, and also look ahead, what we're up against, which is like the next hosts of COP, because that's also you need to keep in mind, in the back of your mind. 1.5, it was on life support in Glasgow. How do you measure it? You look at the fossil fuel language that's in the text. In Glasgow, we saw that like it was phasing out was negotiated down to attempts to phase down fossil fuels. So it was like negotiated down. It was not So that was an indicator of the of the heartbeat of 1.5 degrees. So yeah, life support. That's what I would call it. You did see in Egypt that the influence of the fossil fuel industry, it continues to grow, unabatedly, at COP, and it's just an indication of. Sorry, you see that through the cover decision. So the 1.5 degrees, the viability of it, you can see it through the decision that they take in the cover decision, and the cover decision is usually what the text of the COP presidency. So yeah, I would say 1.5 degrees is slipping away at this point. If it was on life support, in in Glasgow, here in Egypt, CPR, a, AED defibrillator, something like that. And I'm afraid that the next COPs it will be flatlined. I think that is something that you need to seriously think about. Um, because that's in the cover decision. The cover decision is a good indicator of the feasibility of 1.5. Uh, Other side of the cover decision, or sorry, additional elements in the cover decision that we wanted in there was obviously the progress that we have made in Glasgow. There were like 7 or 8 references to indigenous peoples in the preamble as well as in the operative. This time around, like it was not even building upon the progress, but it was like walking back, like years. Yes, there was a reference to the Paris preamble, the 11th preamble paragraph. Again, it is a preamble. So yay, we got that. Well, it's better than nothing anyway. There was one murky reference to indigenous people, direct reference to indigenous peoples. If you look at paragraph 51, it says, right, recognizing the important role of indigenous peoples, blah blah blah, in addressing and responding to climate change. It's the standard text. What we wanted in terms of cover decision, our position was, all right, we want to build upon the progress already made, and we want an additional language that says, in terms of loss and damage, just preamble language, to recognizing the need for to talk about averting loss and damage, talk about non-nuclear loss and damage, and the effective participation of indigenous peoples in loss and damage. That did not get in there. What did get in there, and that is really need to. So that is something that is disturbing. If you look at paragraph 80, it is for the vast majority of indigenous peoples, Red Plus is a no-go. It is something that has been super destructive to indigenous peoples. Red Plus or CDM, like they didn't have like human rights safeguards in there, and the now you do see in paragraph 80 of the cover decision that Red Plus projects can now be classified as mitigation contributions, which means that projects that have already been vetted, so Red Plus products that have already been vetted under the Red Plus scheme, or sorry, credits that have been vetted under the Red Plus scheme, they can now be used under the 6.2 mechanism of carbon markets. So you do see that this this is the carryover from the Kyoto Protocol (CDM) into the 6.2 Article 6 mechanism, but now you also see Red Plus being taken into account of they can be used under the 6.2 carbon markets. Like I said, for a lot of indigenous peoples, like the indigenous peoples saw that Red Plus was being used for exploitation rather than for preservation of indigenous lands, territories, and resources. So that's super disturbing, actually, and it's for a very long time. The coalition of rainforest nations and other parties and groups, they wanted to push Red Plus in there, and they got like pushed back. Every time they got pushed back, then up until today, or up until COP27, somehow the Red Plus line got in there, and I think I read it somewhere that some one minister or one expert was happy because now they can make money of or can get credits from a tree standing, actually, instead of like lying down, like selling it. However, yeah, what we've seen, what Red Plus can do. So this is super disturbing for a lot of Indigenous peoples, and I think that is something all the more reason for us to keep engaged throughout the process. So if you look at everything, the whole spectrum of the decisions that have been made at COP27, and you look at the impact that Indigenous peoples have made or could have made, because those are two very different, distinct things. We have made a lot of impact on Article 6, loss and damage. The first week and a half, great. We made a lot of it. We did our rounds. We could have done better. Absolutely, we could have done better. Because we rely on a few people that take it upon themselves to, all right, now I'm going to focus on Article 6 and loss and damage. I'm not going to do anything else. There are people that are like tagging along, but also have like a gazillion side events to follow. Like I had max 2 side events at COP, but they were related to either Article 6 or loss and damage. I was involved in a side event on the independent grievance mechanism, where I explained what what elements and the principles should be of the independent grievance mechanism, alongside people from Carbon Market Watch and CL. So it's linked or related to the work and under on Article 6. But you do see a lot of people just go to the pavilion events or go to other pavilions. So yeah, we're super happy, and we're super happy that we had a record number of Indigenous peoples participate in at COP. Okay, great. I would love for that to somehow, that we can measure that by the results that we book, the results that we achieve in the negotiations. Because pavilions, they're great. They're great to showcase. However, the negotiations, I believe, in my personal point of view, the negotiations matter. That's what matters. So I would love to see more people like robustly engage into the negotiations, focus on the negotiations, because there was a lot of meetings that are like, yeah, that happen at the same time, and there's only, just to give you an idea, there were like 5 of us actually that actually did all the negotiations on Article 6 and loss and damage. That's not enough, and the vast majority of these 5 people, were not indigenous. I'm not saying that I don't like it. Like, these people do the work. They are they support the views of indigenous peoples, and they do the work that is required. They do what I ask them to do. But this should be also a wake up call to the indigenous peoples, so that they scratch behind their necks or by ears or whatever the expression is, and start thinking about like how they should be engaging in the work of COP and in negotiations. That because negotiations, first week great, second week, that's where you make your money. Or sorry, we're not going to pay for this. That is actually where it counts. And the vast majority of these meetings are marathon meetings, which means that sometimes I went out for lunch or went out for dinner and came back for the negotiations. Everyone else was having fun at Nama Bay, or having drinks at the resorts, and 3 of us were staying behind to track the negotiations, and that were going like well into the night. So what we should be focusing on for the next COP is, one is to really start honing in on what, yeah, on the negotiations, but also on start engaging with capitals, because the ministers, the last couple of days, it's the ministers take the decisions, and we don't have any influence in those. So having a clear, no, I should rephrase that, relationship with capitals in a way that you have the ear of the minister can make or break your negotiation strategy. You can do absolutely nothing in the first week and a half, but have the ear of the minister in the last 2 days, you're in. But if you have everything within the first week and a half, and you have no way of influence, no opportunity of no way of influencing the ministers in the last 2 days, you lose. And that's what we saw. We lost. We lost a lot of things.
My friends, you can now also listen to the Go Maluku podcast on Spotify. Listen while you use other apps or do other things. If you don't have Spotify, just open your Apple or Google podcast or your favorite podcasting app and search for the Go Maluku podcast.